Okay, so today is the 17th of March 2025. Um, I had been busy. I couldn't do the video yesterday, but I will try to do every single day a video. I've been busy doing some assignments for the university, and I wanted to talk about one book that was a bestseller. I think this was a bestseller during the Cold War, which is The Art of Loving of Erich Fromm. The book has the worst possible name. I mean, it sounds coursey. It's like coursey and also, I don't know, not even, not even romantic, like not even naive. It's like it sounds cringe, I do believe. But actually, when you read the book, by the way, this probably was the first book called The Art of Loving. There has been many books with the same name, but this one most likely was the first one. And eventually, Erich Fromm takes love as an art. And when I read the book, I probably read this book about 4 or 5 times. It's the book that I give the most as a kind of, let's say, uh, yes, as a kind of item that I know that will help. I've been giving this book to many people around me, so probably I bought, I don't know, about a dozen of these books, and every time, sometimes I just give away the book or I lend the book and never is returned to me. So I always read it again, and I like to highlight parts of the book. Sometimes I had bought some books that already comes with some highlights parts, and it's very interesting to see what people highlight. But mainly of the things that you highlight for yourself are things that just reflect yourself. It doesn't mean that these are important part of the books, but always the parts that you highlight are the parts that come important for you. I've been trying to highlight things always that will serve me in the future. Let's say to develop a theory, to find truth, things that become really difficult to deny, or things that I will keep just as something that probably in the future will be denied. Yeah, maybe I find a phrase that comes with truth, and after giving it some reasoning and giving it some kind of thought, I discovered that I cannot deny that because it is true. I cannot find an alternative reality to that phrase or the concept or the idea. So I always try to keep it in in a kind of suspension just to see if in the future I could contradict that and find something better. So Erich Fromm talks about love as an art, but what is an art? Art is to create. Art is something that humans do at any stage of life. When we are kids, we play in the sand, in the beach, and we are building. We are just doing it for pleasure. It is like a game. And also, all animals play games. Why do we play games? It's just for fun. There is not any, let's say, biological reason for survival that will explain why animals just play between each other. There is no reason why we should do art. It come to be one of the reasons for living, one of the reasons to live. And art teaches you many things. Let's say I like to also build pottery. Let's say I build this. This is where I take my coffee every morning. I have another piece of pottery here. So this is my plant. It looks like a coral, this piece. And I made the base just so the water kind of falls there. This is a piece of pottery that got broken. And next time I will do it, I'll do it better. And you're supposed to put your toothbrushes here, the toothpaste going here, and maybe something else here like your um, um, like things like the floss, the flossing and anything like that. This is another one. Etc. Okay, I don't have many pieces. What pottery has taught me is that every time you take clay, you start to observe the properties of the clay. The clay in itself is malleable. It means that you can make any form, any shape, or any idea. It can be material, and you do it with your hands. So first you have an idea, then through your hands, to your body, you start to shape matter. And shaping matter, you learn in such a way that the idea itself change because your experience with matter tells or informs your brain what can be done. So you have a feedback loop in which you interact with the environment. And sometimes you can find that the properties of the clay will be something like, usually the more wet is the clay, the more soft it becomes. If the clay is too dry, then the harder it becomes. If it is totally dry, then it becomes like a powder. It's impossible to be malleable. If it becomes too wet, as well, it becomes impossible to malleable because technically it becomes a liquid. So you have to find a sweet spot for the clay. And then that sweet spot is not the same kind of humidity that any clay will have. Every single clay has a different kind of properties. Some clay comes with little gravel, and these little rocks gives a different texture. And some clays are really fine, like porcelain. Porcelain, because it's really fine, becomes more difficult to shape. So that's why porcelain is considered like a clay that is kind of more virtuous or kind of more, a clay that requires more skill to shape or a clay that requires mastery to handle. And you start to then discover that the base of anything that you are doing has to support whatever you build upon. And in that way, you start to think structurally because you start to acquire the properties of the clay. And then you start to have knowledge about the different kinds of clay and how they behave in different situations. And well, it becomes not just about the clay. Then you start to know about your fingers, your hands, which part of your fingers can do what. Sometimes you will need to give shape to a corner, and the corner might be desirable, really square, I'm fine, but happens that your hands doesn't have the square-like shape. So what you will do is to take a tool, and then you start to work with tools. And working with tools as well, you start to discover the property of the tools. Then you start to discover that depending on which tools you could create or not create what you desire. Yeah, you start to learn that sometimes the clay dries quicker or dries slower, and it depends on the temperature of the room. And you start as well to discover that sometimes some clays can dry super fast in 1 or 2 days, and other clays take more than 2 weeks to dry properly. It's like tempering metal. If you have metal and uh, you put the metal in the fire till it's red hot, and that metal start to change the structure. The metal start to actually be red hot because there is a lot of entropy in the particles. It means that the particles are moving. The particles are also radiating heat. And there is a point in which, have you noticed that as soon as a metal gets red hot, it quickly cools down, and then it doesn't produce more that reddish color. It continues radiating heat, but the longer the time passes, the slower the heat will be released. And if you take a metal and you control the temperature, so the cool down happens in a long period, then the particles will organize in such a way that will be mostly homogeneous. That homogeneous pattern in the particles makes the metal stronger. If you have a red hot metal and you cool it down extremely quick, then the fingerprint of the entropy when the particles are not having order stays in the metal. And then for that reason the metal becomes brittle, because at being it's brittle, then the metal becomes brittle because there is not much order, and then it is easier for the metal to break. And you can see this example in many, let's say, in many other situations. I mean, let's say carbon particles are special because they only can be put next to one another in a way in which they do create a kind of pattern order. And there are other particles like glass that is simply mainly disorganized, still hard, but you can temper glass in such a way that it will be hard, even if you cannot notice it simply with your eye, but everything depends of the organization. So art starts to teaches you about nature. Art teaches you about the features, conditions, and also the properties of, if you are handling anything material, the conditions of that material. Art is an exploration, eventually. And that exploration creates. That exploration creates knowledge, and the exploration creates experience, and the exploration transforms reality, regardless if it is matter or not, if it is visible or not. Then we find that art is something that progresses with time. Art becomes something that humans, as masters of nature, can use to always flourish. It means that we progress. It means that we could create things that hasn't exist before through art. There are many sciences, engineering, etc., that technically are the same. Yes, it's the creation, the mastering of the nature, and that mastering of the nature brings to life things that weren't there. So art comes with time, and art also is a kind of predisposition in the human psyche. If you want to build something for which, let's say, you will start to not create but instead destroy it, let's say some people might interpret a parcel of land that, let's say, has a lot of plants in the middle of the jungle could become something else. Then I destroy the land to maybe place a huge, I mean, it's something like killing all species that are there or insects and remove all the trees to place a statue in the middle of the jungle. And then it will be something that will make me think that I'm making a difference in that area. But if you reflect about that and destroying something to place something that has not life, and it can be perceived by some people as transcending. When you destroy, you can see the changes easily. Yeah, to destroy is a form in which you feel that you are transcending because it is easier to change the environment. It is easier to change the nature. When you destroy it, you feel empowered because you are able to see the changes in the matter. So we have two situations in which destroying becomes easy and creating becomes difficult. And sometimes create for the sake of see something that is inanimated at the cost of life might come with a pathology that is more related with destruction rather than creation. So art is a kind of act of transcendence, and love becomes an art because love requires skill, requires patience. Love requires to build. Love requires to not destroy. Love requires some kind of braveness. Love requires experience. Love requires also, knowledge. And love requires to be conscious of the accumulation of that knowledge. So we usually create things as well for others to like it. Sometimes we don't create things because we are passionate of what we are creating. And when we create things for others just to receive acceptance, the exploration is limited. The exploration becomes something that might serve us. It depends on the person. But that exploration is technically egocentric, as the ego is by definition what we do or our behavior depending on what we think the others will think. And so we also start to then demolish some kind of preconcepts about what is love, because maybe in Disney movies we see that love has to be infinite. Love has to not have end. Love has to be unconditional. And this is naive love. This is love that is not real, then you don't stay with me forever without any condition. And if you don't stay with me and you don't love me uh, with unrestricted, with an unrestricted force of love, then it's not true love. So we have this conception about true love being the love that will will be unconditional, the love of a mother that spoils his child, because instead of shape that child by some wisdom, is shaped by a kind of other force that will think that what is better for the child is to otherwise give this unconditional love that will not shape the child for the environment that in such a way that will acquire another features, but we think that maybe we will feel bad with ourselves if we at any point don't give that kind of Disney love that becomes kind of passionate rather than rational. So the rational love will think that something like the child maybe is running and falls, and maybe the child starts to cry, and we know that we are there for the child, and we could have the option to go quickly to the child and comfort him, and technically let the child know, I'm here for you and don't be scared. You are protected, you are in a safe place. Or we could be in a position as a satellite and protect the child to explore. Whilst the child is exploring in a safe environment, what is to fall, to analyze what happened to her or he. Whilst he stands up, he checks himself, he analyzes the situation, he noticed that maybe he cries, or she, and knowing that nothing great happens, then the child might understand that his feelings of being scared because he felt was something that can be overcome. And noticing that that feeling has been overcome, he stands up and continues running. And this is a metaphor that also happens in life and in many other situations. So this is a strength and resilience that the child starts to have whilst he's in a, let's say, supervised, safe environment. And so this is a kind of more rational love, but it doesn't mean that we're gonna negate any kind of feelings like tenderness and closeness, etc. Because these are also feelings of human nature, and as well, they don't have to exist for a reason, because this is my make us human, like playing games, just going outside, the place, the child's play, the animals play. Sometimes a simple ball can make a huge day for a few childs, because they can play, and also it doesn't have to have any kind of rational explanation behind that. So we do believe sometimes that everything has to have a function, but precisely that's the problem of being always seeing human nature through a positive lens. And I mean positive as positivism. The positivist lens thinks that everything has to be quantified, thinks that an outcome has a reason, and the production of an output can be always controlled by factors of reason. But that's precisely one of the problems that denied human nature. There is another kind of, let's say, pathologies that the humans and the child will develop. And this is always related with the paternal figure or maternal figure. And nowadays, we know that it doesn't have to be with any kind of, let's say, relation with a father or a mother or a gender. We talk about more about the carer. Who is the carer of the child? There have been childs who have been neglected. There have been childs who not grew up in a family, or there are childs that maybe stay in different homes, and they have developed another kinds of paternal figure that are not the ones that grow in an stable family. There is people who experience intraviolence when they are childs, and there is people who doesn't experience violence when they are in their family nucleus. So it comes that the parenting or whoever is the carer has to be with who we are and how we develop in the future. And some people might be aware of this and could exploit that in certain ways upon other persons. And some people become aware of that and they heal whatever needs to be healed. And some people, knowing or not knowing that, find strength in that. So this is, let's say, the brain develops as well as a kind of AI that takes information, and depending on the experience, we could create outputs and we could interpret reality. So this kind of love and parenting style that we receive when we are childs, the nurturing of our family becomes like a kind of prompt that you will put in an AI. Is our early prompt. Yeah, it's early coding, like hard coding of our brain. So you will find people who regularly falls in love, yeah? And it doesn't mean that it's bad to see everything around as having a relation to you for which you will love. Maybe it's more about some people that could have this unrestricted love for anyone at any time, and then that love goes away, and then they will find another person, and this could be seen as a battle in which people find, let's say, someone who they see that will fix their problems, yeah, someone from which they could receive protection. And yeah, the experience of finding a messiah or prophet, someone who will help us to navigate life. And I think that at least is my experience as well. Let's say, do not come from a knowledgeable family in the sense that none of my parents is an academic, and I found a kind of refuge in knowledge, in books that I was not given before. And finding this comfort and ideas makes me think that sometimes I could have find knowledge for which it feels like I'll be safe, for which I will find more security, for which I will find more congruence in my feelings and complementation, etc. Uh, so then for Erich Fromm, the theory of love is something that you build, it's something that you are constructing, is something that is done by reasoning. You will find that there are arranged marriage, and many of these marriages are successful. They create lovable families, they create sane children, and they progress through life uh, together until death. And these are arranged marriage. It contradicts the belief that we have to find love because we fall in love, and it contradicts this idea that there is half orange for every single person. So we are finding our other part, and the other person has to be the opposite and has to complement me exactly in the things that I want. So this, what it says is that love is also a decision, just like when I take a piece of clay that doesn't have any shape or form, and I start to give form to that clay. So you are building, and when you understand love as an act of creation, of building, then you will understand that love can be always something to work on, something to never ends, because you are always making it better. And it, it relates with your family, siblings, kids, everything. So this idea that we left the animal kingdom and we start to transcend is the possibility of going forward and not returning to the animal Eden's garden. Yeah, it's like we are expulsed from the garden, and before we didn't have reasoning and we didn't have consciousness, but once we see that each other as naked, we felt shame, we are aware of each other, and we start to become aware of conscious, and we have reason, and it means that also we can change the garden instead of being part of the garden. And reason can only move forward. It's very interesting that we cannot go back to be unconscious. So when you see this scene in the Matrix of that guy eating a steak because he didn't want to go outside the Matrix, and as well I talk about that in another video, in the Matrix, you are unplugged to the Matrix to go back into the cave, and the Plato's allegory of the cave is that people is in the cave seeing shadows, and you will try to leave the cave. In the Matrix, they are going to the cave. And this guy who decides to not not be in the Matrix. Sorry, who decides to stay in the Matrix? I can't remember his name. He's eating a steak and is just chewing the steak and flavoring that, and he just described that as pleasurable. That's impossible to do. After you have reason, you cannot go back to be unreasonable. After you have consciousness, you cannot go back to be unconscious. You might not be conscious of something, then you act in a certain way, and if you're conscious of something, but you decide to react as if you were unconscious, that's a decision. Yeah. So sometimes we can take the decision to reject a reality, or but it doesn't change the fact that something that is unconscious becomes conscious. Yeah. Then something that was unconscious is not mechanical or done by impulse anymore, but something that becomes conscious starts to be a decision. Yeah. Then you don't see that as the only path or the path, but instead you see that as one of the choices to follow. And yeah, it's the only way that we could live is just going forward, developing a reason, finding harmony, trying to be one, and accepting that that's irreversible. So the theory of love of Erich Fromm also starts with an interesting analogy. By observing nature, he noticed that no single animal commits suicide for the reason that the animal just feels sad and dies. That's only humans. And humans do that. Humans commit suicide by choice. Humans are the only ones who do that. There are animals that sacrifice themselves, but usually that sacrifice has to do a kind of the decision of an animal giving its life is usually with the prospect to life to continue. Yeah, and that's a different kind of situation than not having purpose or not seeing a reason and then dying because it's a choice. That choice is not a choice, let's say, in itself. It's usually factors of our environment when the environment becomes inhuman. When you are not living in a human environment, you cannot exist, and likely you die. Yeah. So the analogy of Erich Fromm is about seeing this animal trend in which any animal, let's say an animal loses a hand, or well, a feet, and then the animal just keep going in life. It doesn't matter what happened to the animal just keep going in life. If there is a plant growing in an obscure place, the plant always seek light. You will see all the plants that will try to leave the shadows and seek light to flourish, to produce seeds, to continue life. And that's a normal trend in nature. So this is the possibility of transcendence. It's like there is a force for life. That force of life is related with love. Technically, we have this animal desire to have sex, because as well we have the animal desire to love, yeah, to protect, to transcend. And this animal desire not just allow us to reproduce ourselves, but also allow us to know each other, to be in intimacy with each other, to accept each other and be accepted. These spaces are spaces that are spaces for creativity, to be also feel secure, etc. But this is also related as well with how we were, let's say, nurtured when we were childs, yeah, who were our maternal figures or our carers, yeah. So remember, nowadays it's not paternal or maternal figures. It doesn't have to be anything with gender. It has to be who is the carer, yeah. But definitely there is a relation between who are the carers and how our personality develops. So since we see that plants and any living being is always seeking to transcend, then this is not foreign for humans. But humans are in certain way coming from nature as well. So we cannot be detached from nature because we come from nature. In the case of digital intelligence and other beings that will be in the future existing with consciousness, these beings come from proto-nature, that is ourselves. They don't come from the unconscious part. They come from the semi-conscious reality of the humans. They will see us as part of nature. Right? They will see us as plants because we have not achieved a collective consciousness. And since we come from nature, we cannot detach from it, and it's our goal to mentally detach from nature, because once we control nature, as not because we want to possess and not because we want to accumulate, but we want to really take care of nature, because that's another way to transcend nature, be detached from nature in the way in which we can take care of nature being because we are conscious. Then we start to do what humans should be doing. But what humans should be doing, then we have to analyze also what animals do. So we have a plant that maybe grows coconuts, and the plant, the palm produces the coconuts, seeds falls, and some animals can drink the water. Some coconut seeds will flourish. Other animals will take the pulp. Other animals will use the shells for maybe put it in their nests. And then we have, let's say, the bees. The bees work together in a hive. They produce honey, and they keep themselves alive by using the honey when there is a harsh time. And the bees produce honey, the palms produce coconut, and etc. But this is, again, not to believe that every single thing has a reason. Because if we think that something has not reason to be, then it shouldn't be, it shouldn't exist. And that's why we cannot give value to certain things. We have, for example, this analogy that any wheat is wheat before we understand the benefits of that plant. Once we know the benefits of a plant, the plant stops to be wheat and it becomes something else. Before that, it's something that we see as nothing, that has no value for us. It's something that we just undermine and we don't appreciate it, and we simply take it as, let's say, the background of the environment, nothing important. And this is a problem. This is a problem because we are not conscious about, let's say, how much energy, how much time has passed, how many generations happen to be before something that contains genetic material and has accumulated all that knowledge through generations, is afterwards just killed because we cannot appreciate, we cannot see that this is the accumulation of knowledge. It's like, it's easier for us to see, let's say, something like a mobile phone, yeah? the mobile phone, we can think about the chips, we can think about the materials, but before all that happens, someone has to create, maybe someone has to take a rock, and the rock will form an oven, and in the oven you will melt the iron, and melting the iron you create a hammer, and having the hammer or the head of the hammer, then you take some wood and you create the handle. Then once your hammer is complete, you can start to create a bigger machine for producing wires, and then you will use those wires for maybe producing something electric that becomes another machine that creates more finer or more fine technology. And this technology accumulates till the point that we create this. And if we think about all the effort of knowledge that has been accumulated through time, and we are conscious of it, we might be conscious of all the knowledge and accumulation that has been going in one plant, one animal, one insect. Sometimes we just allow certain species to die because we don't think that serve us, but that's a problem. In the future, we will want to have that information that we lost already, because it's information that has developed and refined through millions of years. Now, going back to what humans should be doing means that we humans should be doing human work, and human work is related with the mind. Human work is related with the production of ideas, with the production of fine things. With human work is mainly related with reasoning, consciousness, planning, group behavior, etc. So then we have the situation in which humans should be using their brain as their main organ. We do not produce milk, we do not produce honey, we do not produce wool, yeah? So humans use their brain. But humans' brain can be conditioned. And humans' brains without consciousness can be programmed. And that's one of the problems today. Sometimes, if we are blindfolded, our traumas take us. Our traumas when we had been exploited, or when we had been, let's say, hurt being children, are related always with a higher power. And as adults, we might find that higher power from that, let's say, perpetrator in a leader that will guide us to something. And we find that familiarity that we experience. That's one of the problems with trauma, or that trauma becomes generational, and then evil becomes unrecognizable as it becomes unconscious. So we could always fall in the trap of a power that wants total domination, because it feels familiar to us. It feels familiar to maybe just seeing that power as familiarity when we were childs, as a solution. And so then, if we are doing something without reasoning, love is not foreigneous to that reasoning. Love is something that can be also thoughtful. Love is something that you can think as something that builds up. Let's say Zizek says that the most important of love is the habits that you create with your partner. And it means maybe to kiss your partner as you wake up. Not saying that this is good or bad, every single develops certain things, but my experience is something like that. To hug your partner, to waste time together, to feel comfortable wasting time together. The pleasure of seeing the other person having pleasure, the pleasure to prepare something nice for the other. Yeah. This is again art in which maybe I'll do the breakfast, and this breakfast is done carefully because I know that it's gonna fit the other person, and the other person becomes what I'm giving it to her, and then I choose the best that I could find, so I could keep her in the best and for the best condition, and because I'm desiring the best, so I'm trying the best, and these habits can form consciously as well, and small moments of pleasure that keep the fabric of love. Yeah. So this becomes a joy, and the joy is something that we experience usually as givers. And when we enter in this kind of dynamic in which we can give love, and that joy also becomes part of the dynamic in which both try to give to each other. And giving becomes an altruistic kind of act, and to be able to give is also part of the construction of love, which is contrary to accumulation for only me, for myself, seeing the others as an extension in which I will try to just gather, not give, and dispossessing the other persons from what they have, and self-centered narcissist behavior, etc. And then love becomes to give, as let's say a mother will feed their baby, or a man will protect their wife and sons and daughters whilst they are vulnerable, to provide. That provide is links love with an act of life. Then love becomes an active concern that needs reasoning for growing together, for the other person to grow, to receive, and for me to grow también. To grow as well, and that's one of the, let's say, consistencies of the act of love. It comes also with respect, and it's very interesting that respect doesn't come from having fear or having amusement. Respect comes from the word respicer, that seems to be Latin. Respicer is to look at. To look at, respicer, is similar to many other concepts in many other cultures. Let's say one of the popular ways in which we can describe this is when you watch the movie Avatar, Steven Spielberg, I think. Nice, thank you. Can't remember, honestly, but Avatar. Okay, shit, can't remember. Well, I can remember the name of the director, but in Avatar, you see several times that families are in harmony and they say to the other, I see you. It means I recognize you and I accept you as you are. And because you are, I am. Without you, I cannot be. Without you, I cannot exist. Yeah? I see you, therefore I exist. I exist because you see me. Yeah? I am, not because I say, I am, because you recognize me. This is the concept of the otherness. The otherness is to understand that the other person is different, and therefore it should be respect. Then, you, as the name says, the word of the root says, respect is to look at, yeah, to observe, to accept, to see reality as it is. Have the wiseness to accept the fact that such existence is, and acknowledge it also makes me what I am, as I'm acknowledged as well. So this is an ability, because you have to be watchful of your bias, you have to be watchful of your preconcepts, because it requires reasoning. You have to be enlightened enough, or you have to have the reasoning, or you have to have at least certain cognitive tools to see reality as it is, to see reality as the expression of what it is, in order to recognize the other person with its unique personality, with its unique features. Yeah. And when you accept the difference, you also can accept yourself, and you are not ashamed anymore of being yourself. So you connect your shadows, and that unique individuality of each other allow us to live in more harmony. So to respect also means that I look at the other person, I accept the other person with its unique features, because without those unique features, the other person cannot be that person. It will be something else. Then, if these unique things are the features that make the other, then love becomes the act to allow those features and that uniqueness to develop, to flourish, to keep growing. Because that's the root of what is the other, and that's the root of what I am, and that's the root of what you are, and that's the root of being human. Yeah. So everyone is unique. Everyone is different. Everyone should be different in order to be human. Hannah Arendt says the possibility is one of the rights and parts of being human that are given by fact as soon as we are born. We are born with an innate right of possibility. Because as soon as we are born, a possibility starts. As soon as we are born, the future is not written. It can be anything. And If we are allowed to flourish, then the possibilities are always there. Okay, that's an hour. See ya.